the meeting in general. But so welcome everyone. I'm just thrilled to have everybody here and the beginning of the new year and starting off with a lot of energy to join together. And I think, you know, despite the landscape, I think there's such important work that we are going to do together. So welcome. With the attacks on our capital and the ongoing calls for armed protests at state capitals and around the country, we really need to be focusing our attention on the spread of militant hate and extremism. And if we want to prevent more scenes like we saw last Wednesday at the State House. So in that, to that end, we invited Xandra Rice Hawkins from Granite State Progress to give a presentation on Sunday at 4 p.m. And Rob will put the link in the chat to talk about militias and extremists here in New Hampshire. No one has been following them more closely than Xandra and Granite State Progress have. You've all seen Tim at the event filming, and just a reminder for everyone to go on mute. And so this is an important program because if we're going to stop these folks from getting more of a foothold, we really need to be acting now. Gail, if you can be watching and try to mute people, because I think as people are coming in, they're not necessarily muting.
Yeah, I just muted somebody, so yeah.
Okay, thanks a lot. Sorry about that. I guess there's a different setting that I probably should have used. Anyway, so I really encourage people to sign up. It's going to be a great program. Xandra will, you know, she's been following the Free Staters, the Minutemen, the New England Minutemen, Boogaloo Boys, and others, and she'll give us an overview about how we work to break the cycle of radicalization and violence, both here and across the state. And so, you know, what we saw in Washington was an attack striking at the very heart of our democracy, unlike what I've seen in my lifetime. I think unlike what any of us have seen in our lifetime. Lives were lost and our country still remains at grave risk. We're also nearing the grim milestone of nearly 400,000 lost to COVID. So it seems only fitting to take a moment of silence before we start tonight. So I would really ask people for this to go on mute and let's just reflect for a few minutes on the lives lost and the challenges that we face together.
Okay, welcome everybody to the main part of our program. This is, can you guys hear me? Am I good? Okay. This is our 4th annual legislative overview meeting. The focus of this Zoom, and whoever is not on mute, please get on mute. The focus of this Zoom is to get a better understanding of the challenges facing Democrats in the legislature this session, and importantly, to begin the process of understanding how we can reverse the down ballot disaster of 2020. The Zoom is being recorded, and please put your questions in the chat. Because we may not get to all of your questions, please name the individual you would like to answer your question, and then I will forward it to them and ask them to answer it directly for you. There are good many current and former state office holders in attendance tonight, and I would like to welcome all of them and thank them for their service.
I can't change
particularly difficult times. Pardon? Did you say something? Okay. Those of you who lost election this round, we certainly encourage you to try again in 2022. And we want you to know that Kent Street Coalition will do everything we possibly can to help you to victory. One person we sincerely hope will answer the call again in 22 is our friend Sue Ford. She has moderated each of our 4 previous events, and now I'm going to turn it over to her. And welcome, Sue, and thank you for your service, and thank you for helping out yet again.
Thank you, Rob. There is no other group than I love to meet with the Capital Coalition, and you guys have been wonderful and helped us tremendously. I will tell you, though, that as I introduce people, I will probably admit that I have a new role model. I watched the impeachment yesterday, and she was really good. The gentlewoman's time has expired. The gentleman's time has expired. I've been practicing that all day. We need to keep a tight rein on our timing so we can get through. And as Rob said, just please put your questions in the right in the chat room, and we'll get those out to people if we don't have time to go over there. The first person I get to introduce is Renny Cushing. And I want to say thank you personally to Renny. Every single time the feds start getting going on putting someone else to death, I think, thank you, Renny. Thank you, Renny. New Hampshire will no longer do that. What really I thought of is, nevertheless, he persisted. And he has persisted on that for a long time. I know he will also thank the people that are working with him, and he's got a tough job ahead of him. Renny, we're all with you. Go for it. You need to unmute. Can you unmute, Renny? There
Okay.
it is.
No, it was, hello? It says you cannot unmute yourself by yourself.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you, Sue, so very much. And I look forward to working with you both outside and inside the legislature in the future. And thank you, Louise, and thank you, Rob, and thank you to all members of the Kent Street Coalition and the Capital Coalition. I can't tell you how much it bolsters those of us who are legislators who go to do battle, if you will, under the dome, to have the witness, to have the presence, to have the support, to have the solidarity of members of the Kent Street Coalition as, I don't even know where to begin, as an antidote to the Free State Project lining the halls, or the, gun owners of New Hampshire, or whatever different organizations there are. I have to say and acknowledge that, first of all, that under the dome, figuratively, but within the legislature, I think we're all undergoing a grieving process. The fact that there are 49, Democrats lost 49 seats, and rather than having the majority, we're now in a 212, 186 minority position, is very painful. I know that as I see familiar faces on here that I haven't seen for a while, former colleagues, it is just, not only do we lose the House, but we also lost so many important brothers and sisters, people who, have fought side by side with under the State House dome to try to improve the lot of the people of the state of New Hampshire, to try to, help in small incremental ways build the beloved community. And there's no way to sugarcoat it. The fact that all levels of state government are controlled by the Republicans makes it a really tough role for us to hoe up ahead. And I also have to tell you that I think people remember the reign of Bill O'Brien in the State House. And I think that people may come to look back fondly upon that as a time when sanity prevailed, given kind of the current crop of legislators. To a person, every friend of mine who lost an election all said, and they can't believe, to whom they lost, to whom the new dependent, and constantly it's a moment of shock to see it unfold, that who the new people are and what the kind of the ideology. This really is, from, I don't like to say it, but it's kind of like the high point of the Free State colony. The fact that you have a majority leader of the House of Representatives who's a member of the Free State Project, who proudly is seen wearing his QAnon shirt or whatever whatever that is. I don't follow it, but
Yeah, great. That's
Xander
great.
will tell
Good
you
for
more. That
Wonderful.
that gives us cause to pause. That having been said, we have an incredible.
Yep.
I keep getting distracted. I think we have an incredible group of 186 Democrats. We are the largest majority, largest minority in the history of the state of New Hampshire ever. And with that, if we're, our hope is that we can build a cohesive, tight unit, and that we will be able to exercise power in the minority to help at least undermine and stop some of the more egregious attacks that are going to come. And I know my colleagues are going to start talking about what's going to happen with education, what's going to happen with finance, what's going to happen with reproductive rights. All those areas are under attack. And it's going to be really important that as we do battle, as we engage Republicans, that we have the support of the public. I will tell you that I told Democrats that my intent is I will lead Democrats through defeat over the next 2 years. And by that, I'm not going to lead us to, we're going to have our defeats, but we're going to go down to defeat. In the process of defeat, I think we're going to win. And what's important for us to win is that we have to shine the light on what the Republican agenda that's being carried out under the dome entails, because what's in stock for the people of the state of New Hampshire under this Republican leadership is not what the majority of the people of the state of New Hampshire want. I think I'm going to own that. I think we failed in our message, despite good intentions, despite people have to, the fact that, how do you define the last election? It was a referendum on Dan Feltus's income tax, which people may not know that's actually an effort to do family and medical leave. And we were not able to actually expose what that opposition really represented. And that was an attack upon Social Security. It was an attack upon unemployment insurance. It was an attack upon all the safety service net programs that we have in the state and in the country. So I just, I know we're going to need that. We're going to need help. We're going to need help amplifying our message. And we want to particularly look at the record of what individual new legislators are doing, particularly those who are in swing districts that took away our seats. We need to bird dog them, and you need to help amplify back into the community what they're doing. Anyhow, I think I had 2 minutes. Is that all right, Louise?
That was perfect. You did
That was
great.
good.
Renny, we're just so encouraged by your leadership, and we're looking forward to all kind of working under your banner. So thank you.
Well, it's working at all of our banners. I mean, I realize that change doesn't really come by itself under the dome of the State House or under the Zoom of the State House, hopefully, where we do. But it's really about, having an inside-outside strategy. It's really about trying to, build a movement from the ground up, from the bottom up. That's the only way that we're going to make change that's sustainable and lasting.
Absolutely.
You're absolutely right, Renny. And we thank you for it. I hope at some point, if you need us, you call on the activists to support you. You may need to let us know when that happens, but please do. You've got a whole bunch of people that are willing to support you.
And I know that we need that. I mean, I know that we need that, particularly in communication, particularly after, because quite frankly, there are some things for strategic reasons. It doesn't make sense for it to arise up from the floor of the House or from individual, but having the eyes of the community, having the voices of the community define an issue is important. puts us in a place and puts the Republicans in a place where they have to respond to the, to the demands, to the desires of the community at large. God knows they think that the only people who matter are the BIA. I just went, I'm sorry, I did my talk to the BIA talk on Monday night, Sherm Packard's there. I mean, and the question comes to me, one of the priorities of the BIA has been, passage of right to work. And what is your, the question is, what is your caucus's position, or what's your position on it? And I said, my answer was, it's just straight out union busting designed to help increase wealth inequality in our state and in our nation. And we're just flatly opposed to it. Now we're going to take that position internally, but we're going to need the support of everyone on the outside to beat back right to work, as an example.
Thank you, Renny. And let's turn to the Senate. I have had the pleasure of talking to Becky on the telephone, but we've never met in person. Becky, we need to know what's going on. And Melanie, I want you to know we need you to fight for us too. Becky? Is she unmuted? There's Becky, you're muted. Can you unmute? Rob, can you unmute
You
Becky?
should have the power to do
There we
that.
go.
Yeah, there you go.
There we go. It wasn't letting me unmute. Thank you, Sue. I just want to also thank Melanie LeVake, who's also on this call. I hope that she runs again and she wins, and we see both Sue and Melanie in the Senate, because we actually need them back. I mean, it's no question that we need them. So for people who don't know me, I'm Becky Whitley. I am the new senator from District 15, and Kent Street is just, these are the best people in the state to get change done. As an advocate in the State House, there was just no way that anything could move forward without Kent Street behind you. And so I am so excited to now work, on the other side with you in a different capacity. Because I know your power, and I know your power in both supporting legislators, supporting advocates, supporting members of the public who are brave enough to come and share their story. They also feel supported by Kent Street, and that is a huge role that you all play. So the Senate is a little bit different in the House this year. We are all remote. Our new leadership has taken it very seriously, COVID very seriously. We have been meeting remote since the first day of the session, and we will continue to meet remote for committees. And it's been efficient. It's been effective. There's been little hiccups to doing the business. We're hearing that advocates have access to hearings. So I think it's going well. We can do this, and the Senate is showing that we can do it well. And in fact, I would argue that folks have more access. We're getting working families. We're getting people that have never been able to take time off work to go to the State House. Working families who have little kids running around, they can now provide testimony to the Senate. So I'm proud of that. And everyone in the Senate has worked really hard to get us there. We will also be playing a lot of defense. There are certain things that we will be working together on, but we know for sure that we'll be being, the Senate Democratic Caucus will be playing a lot of defense. One thing, in addition to right to work, which I know my colleague Kevin Kavanaugh will talk about later, is this legal safe harbor to protect businesses from COVID lawsuits, which essentially creates a protected legal class for businesses, when instead what we should be doing is everything possible in the middle of a pandemic to protect public health and protect our workers. So that's something that we're going to have to be loud about. We're going to have to say, Republicans, they're looking to create a special legal status for businesses, and we are instead looking to protect our frontline workers and everyone who risked their life to go to work. So that's something I wanted to really raise, and we're going to need some really loud messaging on that about who are we really standing up for. We're going to have to be really loud about the fact that our Republican colleagues will be looking to reduce revenue through business tax cuts, no doubt. And that, as we know, that will only continue to burden our municipalities, our property taxpayers and will result in cuts to services for our most valuable, our vulnerable Granite Staters. So we know, as Renny mentioned, after the last recession, massive cuts were made by our Republican colleagues to our framework, our basic framework of support for our most vulnerable citizens, our children, our individuals with mental health disorders, our individuals with substance misuse disorders. The system was decimated. And that resulted in the crisis we see now that are only exacerbated by this pandemic. And we just can't let that happen again. So we have to be loud about, again, who we are standing up for. So now is the time to continue to fund the mental health and substance misuse system to avoid deeper crises down the road. This is a no-brainer. It's also time, as my colleagues will talk about, to make equitable investments in our public schools. Every single kid deserves an equitable start. And, especially now with all these unprecedented challenges, now is the time. And, we will be really working on building our economy in a more inclusive way. So in contrast to our Republican colleagues, we'll be pushing for equitable COVID relief that supports frontline workers and helps people get back to work and then keep their jobs and stay safe while doing that. And something that also means a lot to me are those policies that are going to support our working families. I'm a working mom. I have a 7-year-old. We need to think through ways that are going to keep our working families in the workforce, right? And that's only going to support our economy in the long run. And we got to keep working on that. We know, as Renny said, there's stagnant incomes and workplace practices. They pit being a parent and having a career against each other, right? One way that we're going to look at improving that is improving access to quality, affordable, safe childcare. That, of course, the lack of access disproportionately impacts working moms. I think there will be some bipartisan work that we can get done in the Senate. Municipal net metering will probably go through. There is some bipartisan support on police reform and accountability, and I am happy to work with my Republican colleagues on that. But I think our role is to be loud about who we support and be loud about who they support. So we're going to need everyone on this call, and I'm excited to get to work in these really crazy circumstances, but there's a lot of work to do, and we cannot stop just because we are not in the majority. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Becky. That's exactly what we need, and we need you to be out there fighting for all of us. I have one quick question for you, though, that's a little personal. I know I'm out of your area, but will you leave me on your email listserv? I love getting the information, and you've already started sending things out, and it's very helpful.
Thanks.
So I'll just leave that for you. And we are also going to move on and then talk a little bit about the budget. And there's one person I know on this site that knows more about the budget than I think the governor does. I will tell you, it is an absolute pleasure to be working with Mary Jane Wallner on the Finance Committee. And Mary Jane, it's all up to you.
Thank you, Sue. And I just want to say, Sue, we are going to miss you so much as we go into this budget cycle. Sue actually served on the House Finance Committee budget for the last 2 years with me, and it was a real asset, and we are really going to miss her. So I think everybody on this call probably realizes that what we have ahead of us is going to be very difficult. We are going to be needing to block some really bad legislation. And on individual bills, I think people probably sort of have an understanding of how to do that. I think on the budget, it's very different. It's a huge document. There's a lot of policy in it. We really need to wait and see what the governor is going to put in his budget. Right now, we are in the governor's phase of the budget process. So during the summer and early fall, all the departments gave the governor their budget requests. And the governor then had some hearings on those budget requests. And now he has the budget, and his budget director are designing his budget. And that'll be presented to the House on February 15th. After February 15th, we will take the budget in the Finance Committee and work on it by divisions. So we have one division that'll work on the education parts of the budget. One division does Health and Human Services. One division does a lot of the other sort of general government kinds of things. We're already, it's very interesting, the tone in the Finance Committee has already been set. And the rules in the House are that committees should reflect the membership of the full House. So the full House, Democrats are 47% of the membership. In the Finance Committee, the decision by the Speaker and the leadership on the Republican side was that they would only give the Democrats 9 places on the Finance Committee, and the Republicans would have 12. So considerably less than 47%. If it had been 47%, it would have been 10 Democrats and 11 Republicans, 12 Republicans. So we're off to already kind of a bad start. To talk a little bit about where we are at this point, we know that, I'm sure everyone did not expect this, but revenues are coming in pretty much where we planned for them to come in. And actually, at this point, at the end of December, we were actually in the black and showing we were a little bit ahead of plan. So the revenues have been coming in. At the end of June, when we closed out the first year of the biennium, we were, I think about close to, I think the LBA said the other day that we were about $80 million short. So we went into the second year behind, but the revenues have been coming in strong. What bothers me about this is that already in the Republican caucus and from the governor, the movement to reduce revenues so that you basically starve the budget. And I'm just going to read something to you to kind of give you a sense. So I read this in, and maybe all of you have already seen this, but this is Business New Hampshire. And in the middle of the Business New Hampshire, there's a big article about Governor Sununu and his major challenges. And around the budget, here's what Governor Sununu had to say around the budget. While other states scramble to cover huge deficits resulting from the pandemic, Sununu believes New Hampshire is in a position to lower taxes. And then the governor says the whole budget will be based around a concept of cutting taxes. That's a big priority for me. He says, explaining he will propose cuts to the rooms and meals tax, the business profits tax, and he may even attempt reducing the interest and dividends tax. So I think that sort of sets the tone for what we're going to face on the Finance Committee and in his budget. Though the revenues are coming in as planned, there is a real movement in the Republican caucus to cut the revenue. And if you're going to cut the revenue, it would follow that you're going to cut expenditures. So we have not seen his budget yet. We don't know where those cuts will be. I want to remind people who've been around for a while that in the Bill O'Brien years, the budget that we ended up with, it took us 10 years to recover from that budget. We worked for 10 years to get back to where the state budget was as good as it had been before the Bill O'Brien years. So if that kind of thing happens again, it's going to be very serious at this point. The last budget, as many of you know, we were able to provide additional school funding. We, like Becky referred to, we were funded a lot of mental health, substance abuse programs. The childcare funding was adequate to cover the childcare expenses for the state. We gave grants to communities to help lower property taxes. A lot of really good initiatives in this last budget. And I'm sure that those will be the target. Those will be the very targets that the Finance Committee will probably go after. We're going to need all your support. I can't tell you where the reductions are at this point because I have not seen the governor's budget. I can, like I said, I can probably take a pretty good guess. Unfortunately, there were some departments that did not even request things like the funding for schools. The additional funding for schools was not requested by the Department of Education. The funding for property tax relief for communities was not requested. I did go to the childcare pages because that's the part of the budget I try to watch. And the childcare budget the request was for $8 million less than it had been in the past. So I think it's going to be, you're going to see it sprinkled throughout the budget, a number of reductions in the budget. And, you know, a lot of that just falls back on your local property tax. And I think that's the kind of budget we're going to see. So we're going to need all of you to come out and speak to the budget. As many of you as possible, watch individually, you know, the divisions and what's happening in the divisions, contacting the legislators that serve on the Finance Committee in the House, and then obviously contacting your own, you know, legislators as the budget goes to the floor. So it's going to be a tough year in the Finance Committee. So great.
That it is.
Thank you.
Very difficult year. And we worked so hard last year to up the education. And I suspect that Mel Myler and Dave Luno are listening to this and getting very, very concerned. I will tell you that I had an opportunity to speak with a 17-year-old who lives in the Woodsville, Haverhill area. And even she is worried about the education budget. She's a member of Legislative Youth Advisory Council. She's looked at all of the education budgets, bills, and she's worried about those. And she's worried about the chair of the committee who happens to come from her town. So Mel and Dave, it's all yours. What are we going to do? How are we going to help you? And how are we going to work with you to support you as we in this particular session?
Sounds good, Sue. Mel, you want me to start and then you do cleanup? I'm going to take that as a yes while he's unmuted.
Yes, he was
So,
muted the last
All
time.
right. So Sue, it's great to see you. Always great to work with you. And thanks, Rob and Louise, for this opportunity. So I just want to start by a couple of days ago, I was checking on the General Court website. And finally, I saw that 52 bills had been dumped into the Education Committee. And frankly, for most of these bills, they should have just been dumped into the trash. And hopefully that's where they'll go. So as scary as the budget is, it's really scary on the policy side too. So I'm going to start with the bad stuff, and then we'll get into some good stuff. So maybe we can, you know, end on a positive note for education. But just to start with, I think Rob, I think you coined this segment of for Mel and for me as how to avoid disaster. So it's a really good question. So I went through these 52 bills that hopefully most of them will eventually make their way into the trash, and more than half of them, or about half of them, fall into one of the following 5 categories. 4 of them public money for private and religious schools. Number 2, pretend graduation requirements. So think the commissioner's quote, learn everywhere program. 3, 7 bills, hate and discrimination. 7 bills. Unbelievable. And I'm going to talk about some of them. 5 of them fall into removing requirements for health and safety, and another 5 are focused on vouchers. And so let me just talk about a couple of the bills specifically. And if you'd like, Sue, I can put this in a spreadsheet. This is all sort of, you know, pen on paper, but I'll put it in a spreadsheet for you and Louise and Rob to be able to disseminate.
That would be fine.
Yeah, Mel's going to talk also a little bit about the committee process, and there's still a lot of unknowns. Maybe we won't even have to get to some of these bills, but the first one's called House Bill 20, and it's a voucher bill on steroids. It actually rips, currently would rip all of the adequate education grant, actually the full state grant, and let any parent take it and apply it to any public or private school they want to do. And under our education reform plans, which really seek to fund school budgets more closely to what reality is, that could be more in the $15,000 to $30,000 per student range. So you know, if anything like this ever went in, I think it would for sure kill you know, public school funding in New Hampshire even more than it is right now. The next one, House Bill 198, this one is awful. It's worse than the one that we saw last year, but it basically allows secondary and post-secondary educations to discriminate on transgender girls and women. And in fact, the title of the bill is relative to an exception to the opportunity for a public education without discrimination. So it is actually saying that it's discrimination, and it's really disgusting. There's House Bill 234, which you know, when you take a look at the title, sounds pretty innocuous, relative to freedom of speech and association on college campuses. But it basically prohibits colleges from providing security restrictions around letting anybody, any public or private speaker coming on campus and saying whatever, spewing whatever hate-filled rant they want to do. Let's see, what else do we have that's really? I mean, there's a lot of lousy stuff in here. I had to. There's another one really related to that. That's sponsored by Max Abramson, and I'm sure everybody's sort of familiar with him, prohibiting political advocacy in public schools. So you can't even be pro or con doctrine. So it sounds to me that you wouldn't even be able to sort of teach Holocaust studies or say that genocide is bad. So that's from Max Abramson. There's also 2 bills to repeal the menstrual products availability that that was put in this past session. So there, we want to rip that out of there. And then there's a couple of bills that would require students graduating from high school, community college, and university system to have to take citizenship tests. Probably I'll see where that one's going. Well, they need to go in the trash. That's for sure. So that's sort of like a quick glimpse of the worst of the worst of the worst. But on the positive side, there's 4 initiatives going on right now that follow the Commission to Study School Funding's recommendations. A couple of them are in the Senate, and spoke with Senator Whitley about them this afternoon. They're both very important. The first one is I'm calling it a lifeboat bill, but it basically rescues school districts in the first year of FY22. So the school year that school districts are debating budgets for right now. The Senate's fast tracking it. It's bipartisan. It should have strong support in the Senate and the House, and it really holds districts harmless and provides them with the cash they need to be able to survive this coming school year. The next one's a much more comprehensive bill authored by Senator Khan that follows the framework that's been developed by the Funding Commission. So that one's very important. Then there's two House bills that are also really key. One of them provides combination of property tax relief and state property tax reform. So think particularly relief for low and moderate homeowners and renters. Really an important piece of legislation. And then another one that helps to bring back the building aid program for school districts, fund it properly, and allow districts to begin to rehabilitate some of their school buildings that are now falling apart. So Mel, what do you got?
Are you unmuted? There's so many people, it's hard to see.
Yeah, I saw him come on earlier.
Yeah, he's on. I know he's on.
So
Mel, unmute yourself.
I may have to unmute him, be unmuted.
Okay, I am
There he is.
unmuted. Okay, so
Yay,
here's the
Mel.
issue.
All right, so Dave depressed us all. What can you tell us, Mel?
Well, I can't be much more positive, I guess. The dilemma that we've got is that you've got currently you've got a public school education that ranks among the highest in this country. And the bills that David talked about will decimate what we've known as public education in this state. That's the bottom line. The House Education Committee has been basically all of the parent choice folks, preschool people, they're all on the committee now on the Republican side, and it's going to be a problem. I want to speak a little bit about what you can do. We are going to, there is no testimony being given in the State House, in the LOB. It's all going to be online. So as Becky said earlier, this is an opportunity to really line up and provide testimony for each of these negative bills. So that's one strategy. Second strategy is there's going to be a lot of written testimony. And I would encourage you to submit that, but it needs to be short. Do not make it long. No legislator is going to read a 4-page missive on your particular position. It needs to be no more than a page, and it needs to be your story, not something that you've been given to send in. It needs to be your story, personal. That does make a difference. But this is going to be a very, very difficult session. I'm sorry, I wish I could be more positive, but I think you've got people who've wanted some of this legislation in for years. We have fought it for the last 8 years. I've been in the House, but we've always had somebody in the corner office to veto bad bills. We don't have that now. There is a slick road for all these bad things that we've been talking about. And the only way we can fight this is by exposing those who are proposing it, those who support it, so that when the next election comes around, the citizens understand exactly where they are, including the governor. The governor's a nice guy, right? You pat your back, he smiles. He's not a nice guy when it comes to policy stuff. And so I just hope that what you guys have done in the past with the coalition here has been terrific. But frankly, it needs to be amped up.
Yeah.
You think you've done enough in the past, it needs to be amped up now, because frankly, we are in a deep hole here, and it's going to be very hard to fight this stuff. We will do it, and we will make them pay when they actually make those votes, but we're going to need your help to try to stop some of it.
You're absolutely right, Mel, and I would agree. Keep it short, keep it focused, keep it your opinion. If a 17-year-old can look at those education bills and know that they are no good for the public education in New Hampshire, I'm sure we all do. And then I would suggest, if you're particularly interested in charter schools, there is a new book out, A Wolf at the Schoolhouse Door. A Wolf at the Schoolhouse Door, and it is excellent. It describes how the charter school movement got started during the Reagan years and how it comes up all the way up there. And so, yeah, I have a particular interest in education. You probably all know that. Deb, you're going to talk about reproductive rights. But before you do that, I would like to publicly thank your family for the work that went on in Georgia.
Oh,
And I will let you explain it.
thank you. Thank you so much. I first want to say my deepest thanks and a real, very, very sincere gratitude to everyone at Kent Street Coalition. I cannot tell you the number of times it has felt like doing battle under the dome, like Minority Leader Cushing said, and we come around a corner to see the faces of Kent Street and the signs and the support. And it really, this is a team effort, and I cannot thank you enough for allowing us to participate on your team. So thank you, I really appreciate that. And to Sue Ford's illusion of what my family did. I have family in Georgia, and my mother-in-law and father-in-law live in Savannah. And before the general election, we're working for the general election for the Georgia Democratic Party, but most specifically in Chatham County, which had also experienced a lot of voter suppression. So my mother-in-law raised private funds to be able to put up voter boxes, which we don't have it here in New Hampshire, but it's like a mailbox, and it's a secure box to put your early vote in, because you can vote early in Georgia just anyway. What a concept. And so she secured about a dozen boxes and also raised money and got a trolley to run during the early voting to make rounds around the county so that people could get to their voting stations without having to pay for public transportation or find a ride. And then they transitioned into the runoff election, and we sent my son down, who worked for the Georgia Democratic coordinated campaign like he did up here in Rockingham County. So he actually worked on the Ossoff and Warnock campaign. So we always say in our house, democracy is something we do. So I'm so glad to be doing all of this with all of you. And taking Mel Myler's words into account, I'm going to be very brief, and I'm going to leave it all in the chat. So whoever is monitoring the chat, if you want to copy this and put it in a future newsletter, please do. Here I go. Enter. There we go. Okay, so reproductive rights. It doesn't look great. I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news. We've got 8 bills and 1 House continuing resolution. None of them are great. I will run through them very briefly, and we will actually, I have spoken with Liz Canada, who is our legislative lead for this year and this session, and she is already working. So she put this list together for us, and she would like very much to be able to speak with Kent Street next month. So if you want to invite her, she would really, really like to come talk about what the strategy is on each of these bills. But know that this is her contact information in the chat. So open up the chat and copy it. That is her cell phone number. She wants you all to have her cell phone number and to feel free to reach out. Also, her email is in the chat. And Planned Parenthood will also be putting out really great graphics before there are votes so that you can use those in your own social media postings, and they're really great talking points so you know what you're talking about. So first off, we have some bills. First ones are 596 and 434. Essentially, they break down to prohibiting in the future any sort of insurance payment through Medicaid that would provide for abortion care. So this is a preemptive strike so that people who are using Medicaid, can never use their Medicaid for abortion care services. So that's what those are all about. Second one, is another Jordan Ullery special, which we had exactly the same last year, and it is the Born Alive nonsense. 625 is a 24-week ban. We always have a ban. There are a different numbered weeks every year. This year, we're going to go with a 24-week ban. We want to knock that out. 622 is the criminal. This one's super special. This is a criminalization of doctors and patients having accessed or having provided abortion care services. It would be a Class B felony. Also, women who access abortion care services, if they did not disclose that they were, if they did not disclose to either their husband, another family member, or an advisor, and that's specifically defined, then they can be brought up on this charge. Some real handmaids shit. Sorry, stuff, crap. You know what I mean? Sorry about that. I feel really salty about these things. So the next one, 430, repealing the prohibition on entering an abortion care facility. It's the buffer zone bill coming back just as it did before. And then we have a continuing resolution from Max Abramson. Again, total nonsense. You will get more details on these and more information specifically from Liz Canada. What I really, really want to call everyone's attention to now, we have an action item right now, which I put in the chat earlier at 7:12, and I will copy it and I'll put it back. Next week on Thursday at 10 a.m. is Gordon McDonald's hearing before the Executive Council on his nomination to the New Hampshire Supreme Court. He is an anti-choice person. He has been anti-choice from the get-go. And if he is in charge of the New Hampshire Supreme Court as Supreme Court Justice, then we will have a slurry of court cases that will be filed, fast-tracked, so that reproductive freedoms are curbed and possibly taken away here in New Hampshire. This is a priority. He was nominated in Governor Sununu's second term, and his nomination was defeated. First, I'm going to say Andy Valinsky led the charge on that. Amazing. He was terrific. We don't have him on the Executive Council anymore. Cindy Warmington's basically on her own. She needs your support, and you need to call your executive counselors and insist they ask the question. So please go to the Executive Council website, bookmark the day so that you can zoom in and start sending your questions in. This is our first action item. So yeah, that's all we got. They're actually going to vote on his nomination on Friday. And there you go. There you have it.
Thank you, Deb. A couple of things to follow up on. I was at the session when Gordon McDonald was turned down by the Democratic group in the executive counselors. And the Sununu then threw a temper tantrum. I am so sorry I didn't take a video, but I didn't. And Cindy Warmington will be with us. She had a prior engagement, so she's coming along as soon as she can, and I'm sure she'll be willing to ask questions. And one more thing, I had the pleasure of working with Liz Canada on the education budget, and she was incredibly helpful. She will be wonderful. So that's going to help. That'll help the reproductive rights, I'm sure.
Yes, and for those of you who have worked before with Kayla Montgomery, you know that she just had her second baby. Huzzah!
No, I didn't know that. Thanks.
Yes, yep. So they've got two, and she is back, but she is also going to be working with Liz Canada, and Liz is taking legislative lead, but we still have Kayla. So if you have Kayla's contact and you're speaking with Kayla, she's still in it. She's still with us. Just add Liz to your list.
Thank you. That's a good information. Kevin, right to work?
I'm here. Thanks, Sue. Thank you, everyone. First of all, Happy New Year. Hope everyone.
Yeah, it's going to be absolutely tough, but after walking around Coas County for a long time, we really need to get the economy going. We really need those jobs. So I'm glad you're there.
Well, thank you very much, Sue. I really appreciate that, and for hosting this and everything. And and thanks for running. And you got to get there again, because it's just, you're such a great voice for so many of us in New Hampshire, really. Well, first of all, thank you, everyone. Happy New Year. I hope everyone has some great holidays. And first of all, I really, with everything that happened this past week, if anyone has family or friends that are in the National Guard, I know New Hampshire National Guard is heading down to Washington. It just makes me sick to watch the news that we have to send National Guard to protect ourselves against fellow Americans. But that's the Trump world we're almost out of, you know, so it's just, but please let all those members know that we're thinking of them. Our thoughts and prayers are with them, that they get back safely and nothing happens down in Washington. You know, and first of all, I wanted to say this, and Louise, thanks for putting this on here, but I know it's a Capital Coalition, and it includes Bow Democrats, Dunbarton Democrats, Canterbury Citizens for Democracy, Pembroke, Chichester Dems, and the Hopkinton Dems, as well as Kent Street. You know, I know Kent Street's near and dear to my heart, everything we've been through. And it's tough, you know, it's tough again, right? But, you know, 4 years ago, we were here and we were so upset with the results of the presidential election. And we had great success in turning that around on the federal level, right? I mean, we're going through some tough times with everything going on, but he's almost gone. And we have a great team coming in, the state team as well as the federal team with Biden and Harris. I can't wait for that. So we're going to keep our heads down and we're going to keep on going. We're going to keep on fighting. We're all here for that in the state, but it's only 2 years and we got to turn this around, but it's going to be a battle. We're going to keep on going. So I just really wanted to touch on minimum wage and right to work. Minimum wage, I signed on for Senator Soucy's bill, which maxes out at $12. And I'm not here to make anyone think we're going to get it. The governor's going to veto it again. The reason I did that, I think Donna has done this for, I think, 8 years in a row. And I think 15 is the way to go. I'm hoping we can get the federal delegation, hopefully the new administration coming in, to increase that. But even if that happens, it still has to go through the Senate and the House in New Hampshire. So that may be added pressure. Hopefully we can do something with that. But Donna's bill, again, it goes up to, let me see, in 2022, it goes up to $10 an hour and maxes out at 12 on 1/1/24. It also, what it does with the tip workers, it does decrease the percentage, but their amount will go up. And if you're a tipped employee, you will still, if you're in a small or a bad shift where you don't have customers coming in, it will guarantee that you get $12 an hour, that the employer has to max you out with the $12 an hour if you don't meet that with the tips that you made. So they will get an increase in the percentage. I mean, the percentage will go down, but the amount will go up with the increase from $10 to $12. Right to work, you know, this kills me. It's just 40 years we've had Democrats and Republicans fight this and vote it down. And again, this year it's back, even after the Janus agreement. So this is just going to be private companies, and the Janus agreement already wiped that out with public employees. And all it is, it's just a way to take the voice away from working people. And even when you look at everything it does, when you take private companies and, you know, even with the employer and the employee and the union coming up with a contract, all this is going to do is getting government involved in private companies and their employers. And it goes against really what I think Republicans say they stand for, but you follow the money, right? And you look at everything that came out and when the right to work out of that, they say they have an office in Concord, but I think they're really based out of Delaware. And they set up 10 different PACs to give to 10 senators that were running, 2 lost and 8 won. So they got 10 individual checks for $1,000 from all these fake PAC funds that were set up through Right to Work. You know, for God's sakes, at least if you got 10 checks and they're all signed by the same person, I think you'd throw something up and say, hey, this is going to be something wrong here. So all it is, it's a vote bought and paid for by out-of-state interest, just because they want to have another flag in another state saying we now have right to work. So what we're doing, and I'm also on the executive board for the AFL-CIO, and we've been working a lot so far with this. We're going to target definitely the House and the Senate, both bodies. Originally, we were saying that we're not going to turn the Senate, but I think there's a chance we can. I think we're going to bring up this, I think, unethical money that they took and either return it or stay away from the vote and show that you're not bought and paid for. But we'll see. And I think we can. And I think a lot of I get back to the 40-year history of this and beating this back. And then so many times we beat it back because Republicans, and it's Republicans are supporting us with this. And it's something we've got to do. And so one of the things we really have been working on is even geofencing. And in Melanie's district, I know Melanie lost, but it's always in my heart. It's Melanie's district, Melanie. It's great seeing you. So that district is the most union member population in the state. So, we're going to go after him with geofence and AVARD and say, you went in there and now you're going to vote against your neighbors. So we're going to try to get yard signs and go after him with Democrats, Republicans that did vote for him, and now he's going against. He's going with an out of state interest. So we're gonna target him and yard signs, and that's all of it, really. I mean, that's everything I was going to try to hit on, and it's just upsetting. And I know we're all here and we're up for this fight. And again, we're gonna get in there and we're gonna fight. It's gonna be tough. I mean, there's gonna be things we don't like that happen, but with all the support of every one of these groups coming under the umbrella of the Capital Coalition, I mean, it's awesome to have this many people here. I finally looked. There's 166 people on this, which is awesome, and it's just great to know we have the support. And it's. I don't want to sugarcoat it. It's going to be tough, like everyone's saying, but you know what? We're here for the long haul, and we're going to keep on battling them because we know we're right, and we're right for working people, and we're right for so many issues that they want to take away, and we're not going to stand for it, and we're going to stand up. And we're going to fight. And so thank you very much, Sue. I hope I didn't go over.
No, I think you're fine, Kevin, and I am glad you're out there fighting for us because
Sorry.
Tuesday is on this,
I'm no sleep
one of the pages. We're both on the task force that's taking a look at what's happening in the election. And I am hearing from more and more groups that we need to get more jobs. We need to be supportive of unions. We need to get that going. So we're glad you're there to fight with us.
Sue,
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Sue.
Yes.
Can I just jump in here for 1 second? Because I put in the chat box about the Capital Coalition and who our members are. And thank you, Kevin, or Senator Kavanaugh. I'm sorry, Senator
Kevin.
And thank you for speaking with us tonight. But it's really important to note that Kent Street is part of a broader coalition, and we all work together, and we have members here tonight from all of those groups. And when you see us at the State House and you see us writing letters and you see us doing these things, we're all doing it in coalition with one another, which is the power of how we make change. When I typed it in the chat, I neglected to mention the Loudoun Democrats and Independents who are just stalwart members. And so it's Loudoun, it's Pembroke, Chichester, Bow, Dunbarton, Hopkinton, Canterbury Citizens for Democracy, and Kent Street Coalition. So I was remiss in not pointing that out, and I just can't say enough about how great it is to be part of this capital area group working together. So thank you for that.
Yes, thank you.
It is awesome.
It is wonderful. I agree with you, Kevin. It's wonderful. I saw Loudoun and Canterbury on the pictures, and I'm pretty sure that Howard Moffett is here to find out what Kat has to say about clean energy. And let's talk about net metering. Kat, can you bring us up to date and tell us what you think's going to happen in this session?
I believe I can. Thank you so much, Susan. Thank you, Louise and Rob. I actually have a little bit of a jump start on all of this because Kent Street, for those who don't know, they have different subcommittees that take different aspects of legislation and policy that they want to work on specifically. And so Howard was the ST&E, probably the most active member from ST&E, Science, Technology, and Energy Committee, that was working with Kent Street in the last biennium. And Joe Kwasnick reached out to me, and we've been working for the last month or so. We did an update on, to let people know what was accomplished in the last term, what we were anticipating for this coming session, and areas where we thought we needed help. So we already started on all that work, and we also had a follow-up meeting with a larger coalition of environmental groups from around the state, because as has been mentioned already on this call, we had identified the fact that with so much coming our way in terms of losing on environmental policy. So I'll start at the high level. I have all the detail, but I don't think I want to just dive into giving you bill numbers at this point. So the overview is that we understood the fact that it's kind of the echo chamber that needs to be reinforced because we don't have a really good way of getting word out. We have great letters to the editor, but we just really need to be able to have a way to put a message out and let people know what's at stake, what's being lost, that sort of thing. I like my placement this evening too, because as I've listened to other people talk about what's coming into their various committees and what they're seeing even on the Senate side with Senator Whitley and Senator Kavanaugh, I think we might have some umbrellas here in terms of just saying they don't deserve to be in charge, or the other thing that really strikes me is being on the Energy Committee, you get to see how much the out-of-state organizations that are paying to set policy in the state are coming in. And when I first started getting into politics to look at the state and what was going on here, I remember that our former governors, many of them, all that I can remember, Lynch and Shaheen, everybody would say, New Hampshire is not like Washington, right? We don't make decisions like them. We don't have the money influence. Well, now it is. And I think that's a real distinction in what's happened with the leadership under Sununu. So I think that a lot of the injustices that we're seeing across the policy spectrum can be, pulled into a very cogent message to the people of New Hampshire. So where I'll start is that we're seeing, I think it's normal when Republicans get in charge, from as long as I've been paying attention, that you get some crazy bills that may end up being sorted out in the committees. And I think because of the makeup of the House, with more extreme people on the Republican side and therefore filtered throughout the committees, some of those may pass through this time. So we may be defending on really crazy stuff. Sue, you asked me directly about net metering. Where's net metering going? What I'll say about that is in the last biennium, Howard's bill, HB 1218, and the efforts on net metering specifically were that we were trying to raise the net metering cap to just under 5 megawatts for everybody in order to open up the market and allow anybody who was interested in doing net metering to be able to be reimbursed for that delta of energy that they were supplying. And we weren't able to get that through. It sort of died the tabling death during COVID at the very end. But the governor had a bill that he was trying to promote, which I went on the floor and killed. And then I had to go to Representative Lang when he brought the bill back this time and told him I wanted to be on it, and I am on it. So there's a bipartisan bill coming through for municipalities, because there were about 70 towns now that have been, banging on the door. So there's pressure on the governor to enact net metering legislation. So we have a really good feeling that net metering legislation will be going through for municipalities. That bill that I signed on to with Lang has additional language about low and moderate incomes, qualifications for being eligible for net metering above 1 megawatt. And then also they're adding hydro. So there's a couple of different hydro bills. So what they're doing, and the way I look at it, is the governor is willing to do carve outs rather than to do a sweeping policy that will allow for the opening up of solar markets. What we're seeing across energy policy, and there's only about 30 bills on our committee, so there's less than there was last time, so it's easier to go through them. It looks like there's more of an emphasis on undoing a lot of things that were built up over time that would be supporting renewables. So, for example, let's see, I don't want to go there yet. I think the scariest bill that we're looking at is what we're calling the Monopoly Power Act, which is HB 315. And I think that that's going to be an all hands on deck effort. They're basically rewriting RSA 53E. And I've got a whole bunch of notes on how that works out for us. But basically, they're pushing back investments in community power and making it really untenable and putting all of the eggs back into Eversource's basket. And the word is that Eversource is who's requesting this. So it's a big sweeping change. It undoes a lot of what we had put in place. So basically the building blocks that have been put in place for us to have a cleaner and a more modern energy economy are going to be dismantled if they get a chance. But there is a whole effort already mounting from people who are in the know about that. And so there is going to be, a major effort, and I can come back and talk, I only have 5 minutes. So energy efficiency also got attacked recently in November. There was a letter on the triennium energy efficiency plan that was coming out of the Public Utilities Commission. For those people that don't know, when the policies get passed through the legislature and become law, oftentimes there's a component that goes to the Public Utilities Commission because they're charged with figuring out tariffs and how things are going to work and the nuts and bolts of how things are going to be implemented in terms of the utilities. So the energy efficiency working group had gotten to the place where they had a 3-year plan ready to go. Utilities were on board with it. So it was ready to launch. And lo and behold, a note comes from the GOP members of the House Science, Technology, and Energy Committee. And Dick Hinch's name was on that letter too. It was November 20th, saying, hey, COVID, can you just suspend this docket? So a pullback even on energy efficiency. And so we responded, and there's been an ongoing effort back and forth, but what we're seeing is a philosophy of the leadership of our committee. Representative Vos, who's the chair, has been a lobbyist, and so what we're seeing is a philosophy that all of the things that we have been trying to do for the state of New Hampshire are not necessary. And I don't know, some of you may have seen, he did an op-ed recently in New Hampshire Voices in the Union Leader called Hope or Hype. And he was talking about how climate science was just hype and that we didn't really have to pay attention to it. So there's that. And Representative Janine Notter, who many of you know, is the prime sponsor on a bill that shackles the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services and prohibiting them from doing any planning regionally or nationally. So they can't even talk about lowering carbon, or so that's just a crazy bill. Hopefully we'll be able to kill that one. So there's a whole bunch of bills on renewable portfolio standards, either modifying categories in the RFAs or changing the way credits work. Again, it's all designed to undermine the market actually working the way that it should. And let's see, on the plus side, I do think there are multiple net metering bills, and there's also multiple bills on limited electric energy producers. We tried to get a LEPA bill through last time, And almost every effort that we made was vetoed last time. So that's always the elephant in the room. But I think that the pressure on the governor is different this time. And I think that actually being in the minority, the leverage that we have, because they're in charge, I think we actually can flip the frame on some of these bills and pressure them a little bit.
I
Maybe.
hope you're right, Kat.
Yeah, I
hope
know
you're
it won't be easy. I think it's the money influence though that is the big thing to alert people to, because that is the reason that bills will get pushed through in many cases to just change, you know, how things work. And
Rob and Louise, I will send you some information either tonight or tomorrow on an Inside Out podcast that was done last April called it's called The Family Business. And it
Yeah.
will give you about 30 minutes of why the Sununu's are against net metering and anything we care about.
yeah, and we should make a big stink, because he is going to do net metering because there's a lot of pressure on him to do it, but he's going to do it.
It's going to be not going to be wide open.
No, but I think it's hard to peel that orange and, you know, it's hard to, but I think the fact that the decisions that are being made because it's okay with somebody other than the people of New Hampshire and the people they elected, I think that case can be made.
I hope you're right.
Yeah.
We'll hope.
So I you know, I have, you know, lists of all kinds of things here, but I'm not sure there's anything. You know, we have a bunch of study committees. They've told us that they might not be entertaining study committees, so we're not really sure where those are going to go once they get into committee.
Good luck with that. I know your chair.
Yeah. We're having orientation tomorrow, so we'll find out how it's going to go.
Good.
Yeah.
I hope it goes well for you.
Me
And the
too.
next area that we need to talk about is election and how our elections are run, how things are going on. I can't find David Cody's name on the list, so I'm hoping he's here because
I am here.
Because David has been fighting against gerrymandering for the entire time that I've been on the House. Tell us how we can avert disaster and promote transparency, David.
Well, let me tell you, the best way that we can do that is by electing more Democrats.
Okay.
However, until we can do that again, I suspect that what we will have to do is do things like opposing the same things that we've opposed 4 or 5 times over, and supporting the things that we've supported 4 or 5 times over. Election law is one of those committees where you have a lot of repeats, a lot of things that don't go through for whatever reason. Had we had a Democratic governor in this past session, we would probably have done the most far-reaching changes, pro-voter, pro-access changes to election law that have ever been seen in New Hampshire. But unfortunately, his veto pen was very active, of course, and so we are where we are. The most serious problem that we have in the coming session is, of course, that the Republicans are the majority party, and therefore they will be in charge of redistricting. And as before, they continue to oppose independent redistricting. So the best thing I think that you all can do until we get a redistricting plan that we oppose, as I assume their plan will be. I hate to be negative, but it's a pretty fair bet that they're going to cut any corner that they can cut in terms of pushing the redistricting process as far as they can in terms of unfair redistricting. So, I mean, I would suspect that what the easiest thing to do would be to favor the independent redistricting bills that we will have before us, of which there are 3, all of which have been seen before. The rest of the legislation, unfortunately, that we have before us includes some of the worst stuff that I've ever seen. Things like allowing the New Hampshire Senate to to choose electors for the president and vice president of the United States. Does that at all sound familiar
Oh, yeah.
to anybody? There's just really, I mean, it's the usual stuff. They're trying to remove student IDs from eligibility for voting purposes. They're, it's the old stuff, and there's nothing really new, and the little that is new isn't very good. I wish I had better news for you all. I'll put the list of the currently referred bills in the chat, and if you have any specific questions about a lot of them is stuff that we've seen before in one form or another. There's very little that's completely new.
Yeah, unfortunately.
There are a lot of them. I could go through them. If people have questions about specific stuff, they can email me. It's kind of, if I went through everything that was wrong with a lot of that stuff, I would be repeating myself in the first place, because it's stuff that we've all seen before. They are, I will say, this year, the Election Law Committee has some of the most anti-voter access people on it that I've seen in a long time. This is going to be a hard slog, unfortunately.
However, David, we know you've been there and you've been in that fight for a very long time.
I have been.
You
I have been.
it.
It's almost like the Earth returned to its normal orbit when we returned to the majority, because I've been doing it from that end longer than I had been doing it from the majority. So
True.
let's hope that with your support, and I want to thank Kent Street for all their support during the last 2 years. Certainly, the only reason that we managed to not succeed in the last 2 years was due to the fact that we had the wrong governor. So thank you all.
Thank you, David. And there's information in the chat room about Olivia Zink's open democracy, about the warrant articles that we're working on in different states. It's not going to change anything for 2020, but it will raise it. Let's hope it will get the people to do some transparency and hold open meetings and that sort of thing. And we need to start educating the public.
The method, the advice I would give you is don't take the pressure off. Keep the pressure on as long as you can, in as many different ways as you can. On occasion, we will win one. It's the nature of the beast that occasionally they do tend to occasionally overbalance and overplay their hand. And so sometimes we'll be able to pick something off here and there. Usually it's more likely killing something that's bad rather than passing something that's good, but we'll see what happens. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Olivia, if there's something else that we need to add about the warrant articles, throw it in you may want to say something. All right, I'll let you put that in the chat room and we can put that in the minutes and how that goes. I'd also like now to introduce Linda Tanner, who is working with one of my very, very favorite committees, and that is Committee to Elect House Democrats. Linda? You're muted. Linda, you're muted. Can someone unmute her? I really don't know. I can't. Keep trying to unmute yourself.
I think I'm unmuted. Yes, the host wouldn't let me unmute. Hi, thanks for having me here, and thanks for all the work that Kent Street does. I want to tell you that last week when I went to the drive-in session, the drive-in theater of the absurd, came home, I had a Kent Street postcard, and it was very uplifting. Thanks so much for all you do. It's really important. So we're going to talk about CHED. And this December, our fearless minority leader, Renny Cushing, volunteered Matt Wilhelm and myself to examine the programs and operations of the Committee to Elect House Democrats, also known as CHED, and to make some recommendations to strengthen and revitalize its operation to win back the House majority in 2022 and beyond. So Matt and I have assembled a team, a work group. We hope to coordinate and share information when appropriate with the Blue New Hampshire Task Force, but we will operate independently of them. And our work group represents current and former members of the House from various areas of the state and from both urban and rural settings. Carletta Alcia from Merrimack, Tim Josephson from Grafton, Anita Burrows from Carroll, Dave Doherty from Merrimack, Alexis Simpson, Rockingham, Jackie Grody from Rockingham. I'm from Sullivan County and Matt represents Hillsborough. So I think we have a lot of areas covered. We're setting out on a mission to look into areas of governance, strategy, messaging and communication, the basic operations of the program like staffing, recruitment, training, continued support and coaching during campaigns. We're going to check in with the candidates, see what their expectations were, their successes and their issues. We know with 400 members in the diverse geographic area of the state that we'll find much diversity in their experience and their needs. Matt and I have had an opportunity to talk with Louise and Rob at Kent Street, and it's been invaluable. They've given us valuable insights, and we will continue to have conversations with them and other allied political groups across both the state and national. And we're going to explore the committee's coordination of resources and collaboration with the New Hampshire Democratic Party, the organized
Are
campaign.
we freezing?
Yes, I am. The county and city and town party organizations and chairs. We're just organizing our calendar and we're setting up weekly meetings with our working group. And then once a month, we're going to meet with a group of people from the Blue New Hampshire campaign. We're going to start by doing interviews and collecting and checking data, doing some data digging. And we need to look at what information we need to get together to make decisions and recommendations. We need to find out what worked and what could have been better. We want to find out resources that were available and those we need to pursue. We need to explore funding and firm up revenues and need to do the work that makes us successful. We need to find out who can be our allies and where to get support. I want to acknowledge the hard work of those who have been working with CHED. There were many factors that led to the outcome of the 2020 election. Some were in our control and some were not. Our intention is to be open to change, but not to totally discard the programs that have been successful, but build to strengthen and revitalize them. Our final report will offer information and recommendations that will be a guide for decisions and changes that must be made for the future of the committee. Right off the bat, we've got 2 special elections coming up. One in Merrimack to flip the seat from our deceased and past Dick Hinch, and the other one in Bow and Dunbarton to hold a Democratic seat. So one of the first things we've done is that we've hired Spencer Meyer, who is one of the regional fellows that worked with CHED, to focus on these special elections so we can get Democratic victories for both seats and pick up one advantage. Our intention also is to look soon to hire a staffer to oversee fundraising for CHED. And it's really important for these special elections and to recognize that CHED needs revenue. And that's one of our big things, is to get a good revenue source. And we certainly need contributions to carry through on these 2 elections. So I'm excited with the possibility of moving CHED into CHED 2.0. that will serve Democratic candidates and build a Democratic majority for the House. And as our fearless leader Cushing said, I want to be the last Democratic majority leader for a long time.
Sounds like a good plan. I see that Cindy is able to join us and is back with us. Thank you, Cindy. Cindy may have the most, Executive Council may be the most gerrymandered group in the entire state. It was designed so that we would have 1 seat and the Republicans would have 4 seats. And guess what happened this term? The only thing that we can be happy about is that Cindy will not be quiet and she will bring our voice to the Executive Council. Cindy, go for it.
Thank you. Thank you all. And I so appreciate all the support that you are all giving me. I think I've been asked, what can we reasonably hope to accomplish? Well, most of everything that comes before the Executive Council is nonpartisan, and there are things that we agree on. I think building relationships and trust among the other counselors is a top priority for me at the outset. And there are a lot of, as I said, nonpartisan issues that we can talk about with respect to state contracts. There seems to be an agreement among a number of counselors about the importance of mental health. I think that's an area that I hope to see that we will see protection in the coming weeks and months ahead. The 10-year transportation plan, I think, is an area that the entire council will work on and hopefully will work on together in a nonpartisan way. In terms of nominations, I think we are going to see a lot of nominations that I may not think are the best people to fill those positions. What we are trying to do right now is we are reaching out to cities and towns all across the district and letting people know, and I'm letting you know, that we have put together the list of all the openings, the current openings that we have on our boards and commissions, and we are circulating that list and asking people from all around the district to raise up the names of people who may be qualified to fill those positions. It would be great if we can have more representation from all across the state and all across our district on the various boards and commissions. We will submit those names to the governor's office. It is, of course, the governor's prerogative on what people he ultimately nominates. But I do think that there are enough of those boards and commissions that deal with very nonpartisan issues that we should be able to get some nominations approved and added to the list. The governor met with the incoming executive council before we were sworn in. And one of the things he mentioned is that he expects that with the Biden administration, we will see infrastructure projects, and that we should have our people all across the district letting his office know if there are infrastructure projects that they are interested in pursuing. And so we have, again, been reaching out to the cities and towns and talking to city planners, mayors, et cetera, about this, about the fact that we understand that when this kind of money appears, shovel-ready projects will tend to get priority. On the other hand, you don't always have money to invest in engineering for projects that may never be funded. It's a balance, but we're asking the cities and towns across the district to identify the projects they can identify and bring those forward to make sure that if that money does come in, that we will have an opportunity to spend it in a way that would be beneficial to the district. While we were meeting with the governor and he was discussing infrastructure projects, I raised the question of broadband, and there seems to be agreement among all of the counselors that an investment in broadband across the state would be appropriate. The governor specifically said he'd like to see $100 million put into broadband. So I think that is an issue where we're going to see some agreement. Of course, we are in a minority, 4-1. So when we disagree, a lot of times what my role will be is to simply to ask the tough questions, raise up the issue, and then a primary focus for us is to make sure that we are educating voters between now and the next election about the importance of the executive council, so that they will understand how important their vote is for executive council next time. To do that, I don't know if I don't know where Olivia is on here, but Olivia Bergen has stayed on with me, and she is helping with this communications program. We will be putting out a short video. You may have seen the last one after the first executive council meeting. We will put out a short video after every executive council meeting, identifying just the 2 or 3 top issues that the executive council dealt with that day. Then we will be emailing and using social media to highlight those issues, and particularly any issues where controversial subjects have been voted on or discussed at the executive council. This is how we're going to educate voters about the importance of the executive council. So we are really committed to having a comprehensive communication program that starts right now. So what Kent Street Coalition, what you all can do, amplify our messages, please. Whenever you can, share them, like them, make sure that you spread the messages to your network. That's how we're going to get the word out, and that's how we're going to build a majority in the future. Letters to the editor. If there's a topic that's being discussed at the executive council, we just voted on charter schools, and you want talking points, you want to write a letter to the editor and you want talking points, please reach out to us. We are here to give you talking points. We will help you. We will so appreciate it if you would do that. And visibility at sometimes when it's needed, when we have nominations. We have an important nomination coming up next week. But I think I trust you to make your decisions about where and when you want to be, but we're going to be here to tell you what's important that is coming up, so that nothing gets missed, and that we just continue to communicate all across the state. In this particular function of communication, we are not limited to District 2. We are speaking to the whole state. We're the only Democratic voice, so we're going to speak as far and wide as we can. So that is the plan for the Executive Council. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Cindy, I'm just thrilled that you are looking at it as a statewide program, because I'm sitting up here in the north a little concerned about what's going on, and to get your message out and the importance of the Executive Council will be huge in this area. So I thank you. I can't tell you how helpful this has been. I've not been to Concord since March 13th. Zoom meetings are fine, but today was a wonderful summary of exactly what's going on and what we can anticipate. And I'll turn it back to you, Louise.
I'm gonna take over here for just a second. First of all,
Okay, then
Sue,
I'll turn it back to Rob.
to thank you. We had a schedule that said end up at 8:10, and you managed to get it at 8:12. Incredible. Cindy, I have lots of correspondence with Olivia, but I would like to say that with all of you, it's also true. Don't rely on us to think of the LTEs you want to have written. Don't rely on us to think of the visibilities. If you guys want something done, let us know. That's the best thing that we can do. The other thing I want to just emphasize is all of you have talked a lot about the challenges that we have before us for the next 2 years, but it's really all about 2022. Everything we should do, we are doing, needs to be positioned to help us win back in 2022. Because without majorities, we aren't going very far. And I think that everybody knows that. Certainly Kent Street is totally devoted to recapturing the House and the Senate and the Executive Council to the extent we can in 2022. And if all of you help us, help you position issues toward how they can make Democrats more attractive in the next election, I think that that would be a really great thing. I do have one question that people have been asking me for Dave Cody, if he's still on. Could he address how much trouble he thinks Chris Pappas might be in from the result of redistricting? You still there, Dave? Maybe he isn't. He can't get unmuted.
I'm
Go.
sorry, it's
Here I am.
oh, great, yay.
Okay, there you are.
The only answer I can give you, since I haven't seen any of what they plan to do, is he's probably in as much trouble as they can contrive to put him in. I haven't seen any of their proposals as to how they plan to do it. I don't anticipate anything good.
I think that's a big problem area on our radar. There's a lot of fallout from losing the House, Senate, and the Executive Council.
Yep.
So Sue and Louise, do you have some questions you want to read from the chat? We've been
I
so busy listening.
No, there was, if Representative Wallner is still on, people were wondering if you could speak a little bit more about what the downshifting of costs might look like and when we might expect that to show up in people's property tax bills. I'm not sure what's going on with the muting because people are supposed to have.
Okay.
permission.
I think
Okay.
I'm unmuted now. Am I
Yes, you
unmuted
are.
now?
Thank you.
You're unmuted.
Well, we're beginning to put together the biennium budget. It'll leave the House by April 2nd, go over to the Senate. The Senate will work on it. Then I'm sure there'll be a committee of conference. There almost always is, unless the House and Senate Republicans have decided already to just push something through. And then it will go to the governor. And the budget has to be signed and ready to go by June 30th. So I think what would happen is you would probably see some of those, that downshifting happening in your community's next year's budget. I'm sure that we are going to have a real fight around public education funding. The desire to reduce funds going to public education is so strong. And obviously, as you all know, because it's been going on for a while, the push for charter schools and vouchers, that will be a big part of what happens in the Finance Committee and the budget, I'm sure. So I'm sure we'll see those. So we have one more. We're good until June 30th because we're on our Democratic budget. But after that, we'll go into the next budget cycle.
Thank you.
Mary Jane, we have a question from Shanna Potvin. It says, has a financial analysis been completed for what happens to town property taxes if the school voucher initiative goes through? And Dave and Mel might have a comment too.
Dave and Mel might be able to speak to that. No, not that I know of. And we haven't, of course, seen what the governor's going to include in his budget yet. So no, I don't. Dave and Mel, that's maybe a better question for them.
Thank you. I had a question there. Does the CARES money count as revenue? When you say revenues are up, is
No.
the CARES money counted in that? No. So
No.
state revenue.
The CARES money was all off budget cycle. So it is not included in the 2-year biennium budget. That was completely off cycle. And there's a separate accounting for it. Remember, it was a huge amount of money. It was $1.2 billion. That is a lot of money for New Hampshire. So, and that is all off budget cycle.
Okay, great, thank you.
Dave, you're unmuted if you want to comment on all this.
Sure, just real quick. I mean, the you know, there does seem to be bipartisan support for at least the you know, supporting schools under the current funding model. So tearing away at that doesn't, at least it doesn't seem like it's like that's going to happen. Certainly not for the first year. For the second year, you know, we're looking at some you know, to try to move in some comprehensive funding reform, and we're for sure expecting a lot of resistance on that. And honestly, given to try to hold public hearings during a pandemic on a major statewide reform, I mean, that's hard to do in a perfect year, let alone when you can't use Reps Hall and stuff like that. So we've got a lot of procedural challenges on this, and we got to make sure that that these, you know, that the R's know that people are watching, and that it really doesn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat. When you knock on the door and you ask them what's going on, and they say, "What are you doing about my property taxes, and what are you doing about school funding?" You know, they make that connection. We got to make sure that all these guys know that.
Thank you so much. And so you raised the question about, you know, it's harder to get our message across in this current COVID setting. And there was a question to Senator Whitley about, you know, can we use the Senate model? The hearings are going forward already, I believe, in the Senate, and can we use that model? But in general, so maybe if you could speak to that, and then if anyone wants to chime in about what who can tell us about what the mechanics look like for how people do participate in these remote hearings, and how we can find that information. So, you know, how we log into meetings and where we go to find that. Kent Street will be putting that out to folks. So yes, go ahead, Renny.
Renny has his hand up. Let me see if I can mute him or unmute him. Are you unmuted, Renny?
Hello? I think I am now.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. This is the ability to meet remotely. It's not really a technological problem, but in many ways it's a political problem. And it's part of, we're in the midst of kind of this ideological battle with the Republican majority that have a certain element of their caucus who are COVID deniers, and who are, who believe that we're wimping out by not meeting in person. They think that they have there's a right to infect others with viruses, and that's the battle we're going. I mean, there's no reason why we had to go to a drive-in movie style theater assembly in a parking lot adjacent to a railroad track in the middle of January to try to find on the radio dial where, how the meeting's going on. That was just part of a conflict that we're ongoing. We're going to have the same fight over how we conduct hearings. Right now, the speaker has kind of delegated to the individual committee chairs the authority to conduct the hearings in the manner in which they might choose. And that ranges from, some Republican committee chair said, I'm not going back to the State House until October. And another committee chair has said, if you want an exec session, you're going to have to come in to the State House and meet in public. And if you don't want to wear a mask, if you don't want to come in here, then find somebody else because we're doing that. It's the lack of consistency that's one of the causes for that. I think the Senate works, very well. It's not. Not lost on me was that on a week ago on Wednesday when the House was meeting in the parking lot, the Senate had met conducted business and passed bills and was in recess before people, the backup of traffic had even reached into the parking lot site. I give credit to the Senate for knowing, for taking the lead. We are going to be, right now there are hearings that we're going to begin next week that will provide for remote participation. And again, those instructions are on the State House website right now. There will be a way that the public can participate. There will be the hearings might be taking place in the LOB, but there'll be no members of the public who are allowed. They'll have to do that remotely. People will be able to sit in and observe. Like the Senate, there's a presumption that documents will be available online, that amendments will be available, but it's still there's still this conflict about within the Republican caucus itself about whether or not meeting safely is important or not important, whether they will put science above the politics and the COVID deniers. I mean, there are still people in the Republican caucus who refuse to accept that Speaker Hinch died of COVID, even though the state medical examiner, said he, provided that documentation.
That's really helpful. Yeah, that's extremely helpful. Thank you. And Becky, did you want to just jump in on the Senate side? And
yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree. I mean, we can do this. We've already shown that we can do it, and we can do it efficiently, right? And give people more access. So I just popped in the chat the link that we are using now that people can, all the calendars entirely electronic. Folks can use that form to sign in for testimony. And even if you say you forget to sign in, then you can still raise your hand and provide testimony. We were in committee all week and it worked well. And, folks are saying that they feel like they have more access.
Right.
Great. Well, thank you for that. I think you make a really great point, Renny, that it's a political, it really is a political problem and not one of mechanics. So
why in the middle of a spike at the death rate at its highest in the state of New Hampshire, would we not do this common sense and safe thing to do? The reason we don't is because because of science deniers. It's politics.
Right. And the other issue that the other issue that was implicated there, of course, was that, and Representative Cody is here and tested to this. There were accessibility and ADA issues, and that, it was discriminatory with people who are vulnerable to COVID.
I think it's by design, Louise. I mean, they know that if they force Democrats into choosing whether or not they wish to represent their constituents and in a safe manner, or put their own lives in jeopardy, that they will discourage democratic participation. They create a barrier to participation, and we've seen that. They all know.
Right. I guess one last question, and we'll look through the chat, and if there are questions we didn't cover, we will send them along to the representatives and senators who were here. But could you speak briefly, because this is an issue very important to Kent Street and one we really want to support the legislature on, and that we're going to be tenacious on, is the anti-Semitic and vile anti-Semitic and racist, comments that what we've seen publicly are from, Representative Don Johnson and from James Spillane, and yet we still have no calls from the Republican side, including the governor, for resignations, no removal of committee assignments, no censure. So could you speak to that for us and how we might best be able to keep the pressure on that issue?
I mean, I think we need to shine the spotlight not just on the Don Johnsons and not that's just jump splint. I mean, it's important to do that and call it out. But quite frankly, there is kind of somewhat of a toxic mix within some of the Republican part, some of those other Republicans that hasn't had any opportunity to be lifted up lately. I will say that it is part of, it is part of the triumph of kind of a white nationalist forces within the current configuration of the House. I don't think there's any other way to do that. The fact that they rejected our efforts to have, to amend the law, the rules, to specifically prohibit hate speech, which came out of the Don Johnson thing. The fact that they rejected efforts to try to have training on, and equity and unconscious bias as part of it. And it will get, tomorrow morning, the news will unfold, I believe, that unfortunately will show you that there's such a double standard. There's such a false equivalency. I mean, I'm having a conversation with the speaker. I came home from session, last Thursday. I knew what was going on. I turned on the TV and I saw what was happening with the white nationalist, insurrection in the Capitol. I had tears. I talked to the speaker about that, and all of a sudden, what is the response to that? Well, both sides. What about Antifa in Portland? I mean, it's just everything. And there's the response is, well, yeah, I didn't like what the Don Johnson did, but she apologized for it. I didn't like, and no concert was playing. And I will, I guess I think it will probably become news tomorrow. But here's an example of, having asked the speaker to, in response to the posting of Spillane of that anti-Semitic, meme or cartoon, whatever it was, simply said that was inappropriate. Join us in speaking now. His response was to go after, out of the blue, and hijack and punish another Democratic rep who had the temerity of posting or tweeting something about the conduct of the chief of police in Troy in attending the rally in support of overthrowing a fair election. And this was somehow, oh no, this is, we go out and look at this. It's kind of a distortion. It's hard for me to explain what it is day to day interacting with people and trying to have a calm, rational interaction with people who just see the world differently. I mean, it is in many ways, it is the difference between what we see people, it's Trumpism that's been, Trump's gone, but it is Trumpism. It's that kind of, subtle or blatant in some ways, racism. I mean, it is the last gasp, I think. Hopefully, I'm optimistic. It's the last gasp of kind of like this white nationalism that's losing. I mean, I think that's what's really about here. That's the whole subtext. I think really there. Right. And how bad is it for the people of people of color who are in the legislature to people who different ethnic identities that are particularly targeted by this hate speech, by this hate stuff. It's outrageous. Yes. And we can lift, we can again battle, which we do. We battle inside the state house, but unless people outside are kind of mobilizing and calling for attention, and not, it's not just, we can't just and saying, why is it that they haven't removed? I mean, tomorrow's news will be an action item for the Kent Street, for these people, when you understand the false equivalency that we're dealing with.
Yes. And thank you. And we see that very much as our role, is to amplify and project out what's going on under the dome, and then ultimately to hold these Republicans to account. And so we really look forward to being partners with you, all of you who are here tonight, and particularly with you, Renny, minority leader, I should say. Thank you. We're glad to have your leadership as we're moving through these incredibly difficult times, and I just personally want to really thank you for that.
Well, and I also want to say, everyone who's presented For the Senate, I'll give them credit to Kevin, but all the, it is not just about, it is everybody in the Democratic caucus who shine a light and are working together and need the support. There is a diffused leadership, I'm hoping, within the caucus, because all of us have, you just heard the incredible depth of knowledge and leadership from each and every one who did that. So I just want to say thank you to my House colleagues. It's just.
Yes, and we're grateful to everyone who presented tonight, and also the other electeds who are here on the call. We know how hard it was last session when you were in the majority, and to be facing what you're facing now in the minority. We will all work on this together. So I really want to thank our presenters, and I want to thank Sue Ford, who is such a friend of Kent Street. I met Sue right when Kent Street was forming. We were sitting at Sarah Henry's table talking about, she was doing the grassroots leadership work with the NHDP. We were talking about, how can we make an impact? And I will always be grateful for that and for Sue Ford's presence. She always answers our call, and we're so appreciative. I want to thank the Capital Coalition. Again, that's where the power lies, is in coalition. Kent Street is just one part of that. It's Bow, it's Dumbarton Democrats, it's Hopkinton Democrats, Loudoun Democrats and Independents, Pembroke and Chichester Democrats, Canterbury Citizens for Democracy, and hopefully this time I haven't forgotten anybody, but please know that we appreciate everybody. And this is a great event each year. I also do want to give great thanks to Rob Claflin. Rob has been devoting countless hours not only to putting this program together, but really as the convener of our Swing Blue working group, really thinking about how we start now to win the 2022 election, both at the House level, and the down ballot is where we focus our efforts. And that it's just so essential. And we saw that this time around, and we're going to renew our efforts and fight as hard as we can in a very peaceful way. I'm hesitant to use the word fight right now, to be honest, but we're going to work as hard as we possibly can. And I would just say to close that Deb Altschiller had to leave the meeting, but she talked about, her family doing democracy. And I really do believe that doing democracy is how we best defend our democracy. We had some discussion tonight with all the events, should we shift the focus? But really, when it comes down to it, this is how we build a robust democracy that can withstand the sorts of challenges that we're seeing now by, citizens stepping up, by not just citizens, all of our body politic stepping up to make their voices heard and to participate, to run for office when possible, but also to just join in the discussion. And I'm grateful that the people here do that. And Arnie Arneson has a phrase too, that politics is how she practices hope. So she always says, politics is how I practice hope. And, this is the work we do is how we practice hope. And when the death penalty, Renny, you worked how many, 22 years on the death penalty? And you had that amazing quote from Seamus, what's the poet's name? Let me,
Seamus Haney, of course, from the Cure at Troy.
Seamus Haney.
History tells us, don't hope on this side of the grave. And yet, once in a lifetime, that longed for tidal wave of justice will rise up, and hope and history rhyme.
And with that, we'll end on that note. So I want to thank everybody. Great meeting. And, you know, we're onward and forward, and together we can, together we will, because together we must. So thank you.
Okay.
Bye.